Bones reports his success in stealing the Ranger's courage, only for Sledge to send him right back down without securing those bones as he didn't get them all. Which ultimately leads to their loss, though only after Ivan screws around town for a while to take in the sights.
Hey, maybe instead of repeating Robonite's nonsense side quest, you could have had members of the team showing him around to acclimate him to this time period. Coda would make the most sense for that, since he's also displaced, and to distract them long enough to have Bones steal some of their bones and get Ivan to the point he could trust their word, backed up by the conduct they'd already shown. But no, instead we have... Say what you will of the Kyoryuger, it never robbed its cast of their dignity as it actually showed respect to them.
Ivan, however, in his travels, has been making friends, ultimately assembling his own band to... he's not.
You've got to be joking!
The Knights of Amber Beach!
Vivix, rise!
You dragged untrained, unskilled, unarmed non-combatants, one of them disabled, intentionally into a battlefield. This is Q Ranger levels of stupid.
A worthy band is indeed hard to find. Whoa!
This is bad comedy.
Of course, the entire subplot is made pointless by Keeper revealing... Gasp! They had the power within them all along! Which entirely infantilizes the entire point of this monster's entire power set, in that it's not that easy. Of course, this battle also inserts the plot hole of Ivan's amount of batteries. It initially shown earlier that Ken only made 3 for him, but as said, Utsumi Maru had 6 to start out with, and 6 Patera batteries are used in the episode. Still, this has earned them Ivan's sword by them humbling his arrogance, which didn't really exist to begin with. Sink or swim, the 800th episode of the franchise likewise didn't do much justice to this new status quo.
And if you think I'm being hyperbolic, this was the lowest rated episode of the first half of Dino Charge, with just barely over 1 million viewers. A first for any program airing a new episode ever on Nickelodeon. Ivan's introductory arc went over horribly with audiences, ultimately beginning the series' exodus and or the more contemptuous part of the fandom rising up to say, I told you it sucks.
But it doesn't help that with this, Sledge introduces a new minion.
That is now 2 fart jokes this series has made, and this episode is full of them. I shouldn't even have a count. Yeah, I could write off the one adapted from Kyoryuger's use of the Ovi-Rapu battery, since that exists in stock footage, but at the very least, they didn't explicitly call it out as that in Kyoryuger. Just a snarky commentary on the effect being disgusting to both sides, despite the tear gas effect being, well, effective. And they avoided referring to it as farting. Dino Charge?
You thought you could do this alone. Good thing I ate beans.
Yeah, no, there is a complete lack of class. And this is why you fail.
Unsurprisingly, this was the only submission to this season by writer James Bates, who previously worked on Samurai and Megaforce. And this is the man who, by credited actions, is responsible for writing Clash of the Red Rangers, which I have made no secret I utterly despise, and the ever lampshaded by the fandom line of bullshit excuses.
There's a simple explanation for that.
And as you would expect from how implicitly reviled this guy's writing is for the franchise, this episode is utterly awful. To his credit, he was the first to own up to and do interviews about just how god-awful the developmental process for Samurai Megaforce was, but considering what fucked up the second half of Samurai was the shit he was allowed to inject that was original, which entirely fucked up the storyline they were attempting to adapt, well, yeah, this is just more precedent the guy was just as much bad at his own profession, and it wasn't just Zachar's decrees messing up good ideas.
The focus of the episode is Tyler getting into a feud with Ivan as he's the new hotness on the block, as Ivan decided to ride around in full plate armor.
Which wasn't used in Europe until the late 1300s, so Ivan wouldn't know how to use or wear it anyways, nor would his fighting style have integrated its use with how it restrains one's movements, and he was already introduced as wearing a mix of leather and chainmail, more seen of the period. Google is your friend. This took 30 seconds to fact check. How is it that Monty Python gets more credit for historical accuracy in their glorified LARPer movie?
The real reason this started was because of Shelby being a bit of a dick and then seeming to be infatuated with Ivan, and this distracting everyone as Wrench plants a bomb in Tyler's car.
I'm having Diva Talks flashbacks. Except, thinking about it, Diva Talks would have actually done this better, as these two idiots forgot to set the timer!
This leads to Ivan getting a new proper outfit. Hey, his proper attire was more than requisite of that. There was no need to do this. With the final indignity of being stealing Tyler's coats that he bought because Shelby thought it looked good, just not on him.
Ironic, because Tyler does wear it better. What?
You can tell where this goes from here. Tyler's jealousy destroying the team dynamic for petty reasons not previously part of his character, Ivan taking Tyler's conduct as a personal slight, and the two characters written as morons likewise entering a state of one-upmanship to glorify themselves, with nothing actually learned at the end of the day, simply due to the egocentrism put on display, and then how pathetically easy it is resolved.
It's true. I am the whole package. But you, sir, are the Red Ranger. How can I compare to that?
I can cite you a dozen characters who are utter failures as Reds who have smeared the name and reputation of that title. None of whom is named Mac Hartford.
Though this leads to them linking up the Zords as everybody else tries to track down the bomb, wasting their CGI budget for original mecha footage of them grabbing it out of the lot after Sledge makes it giant.
The bomb won't just take out the Rangers.
It will destroy all of Ember Beach!
And flinging it back at Sledge's ship.
You know, the last time that happened, they got sent careening off into space and took them 65 million years to get back. Suffice to say, my feelings about this episode are the same as Sledge's.
I have no words! Actually, I do, but I can't say them with a lady present!
Why is this the aspect of the show that is self-aware?
After this, the next of the writer roulette for this series is the return of original Saban-era veteran Mark Litton, who was around through Lightspeed, and also wrote for VR Troopers and the only tolerable episodes of Saban's Masked Rider.
I've not been mentioning the writers very much as I usually do, and what can I even say? The first half of the season was mostly Judd Lin with a string of differing secondary writers, the ones I didn't mention being Jeffrey Newman, Peter Wiseman, and Tanya M. Wheeler. There's not much consistency in whether having collaboration made an episode better or worse, but as can probably be assumed from the just horrid working conditions Saban has now, once they saw an out, each of these people took it and left. Lin being rusty at the job explains a lot about this sect of the show.
Thus, Mark Litton's short tenure begins with True Black, and the monster Gold Digger.
But first, let's test your luck!
Is this hell? Is this my own personal hell?
Anyways, Litton's work proves itself a bit refreshing, as the Rangers are shown actually training now that they have an experienced warrior among them, leading to the reveal of Dino's Grander's adapted counterpart, Dino Armor X, with it manifesting and them using it with no effort.
Oh, come on! Even, hell, especially with Chase's slacker mentality, that's an easy story to adapt.
No, instead the focus is, once again, on Chase being a dick, discovering Shelby's a fan of a New Zealand band he knows, and making fun of her for it, even causing her to lose a chance to get tickets to their concert with his usual antics. Of course, then the Monster of the Week plot starts, with them being alerted to Gold Digger being on Earth, and Lot having to save Coda from shiny things!
Get ready for a surprise!
Of course, the failure of this means of adaptation is, when he goes to use the Armor X form later, Chase completely screws it up to match the Senzai footage where the tick to Dino's Grander's use had not yet been discovered. Thus him using it correctly before, and knowing how to use it correctly before, and then screwing it up makes him out to be an even bigger idiot and more unreliable than the show has already been presenting him as. Whereas, had they botched it in training and said there must be some key to get it to work right, then him screwing it up later isn't seen as detrimental to the depiction of his character, but actually applying those observation skills the show says he has, but actually never is shown to possess, and figuring out how to get it to work right.
There's nothing wrong with it.
What?
It worked when you tested it, and the transmitter says it works now. Somehow the problem is with you.
Yes, because he didn't trigger it correctly. He tried to use it like a normal battery instead of like an armed-on mode. That he should already know is the trick to it due to their training.
The Black Energem bonded with you not just for your bravery, but for your heart too.
You get back in the corner like you spend most of the series!
No, the explanation is he does things not true to himself, which is disrupting his powers, and his mockery of Shelby being the real cause. But everything he's done this episode is completely within character of how much of an asshole the Dino Charge cast can end up written as, especially Chase.
Now, if they were calling out this bloody character flaw of the group and how it can affect how their powers work in a pseudo-Green Lanternism, since they keep saying this thing only works with Black Energem energy, how is the energy between any of these objects different? Their powers base themselves on the dinos that were the previous bond mates. But were they calling out the character flaw with this? That would be different. But that's not what they're showcasing here with all of them simply using the battery wrong to begin with when they also know and were shown how to use it correctly earlier that differs from what they're doing with it here.
Dino Armor X Charger, engage! Armor X!
So all Chase needs to do is apologize, which is actually out of character for him, to Shelby to get it functioning again, and saving the lot of them as a result. Though with the failure starting to get to them, Sledge threatens Wrench that, if this continues, he has more volatile prisoners that can make them pay their dues. Rise of a Ranger brings focus back to Prince Phil, as the graphite energem is discovered.
Graphite is not a color, it is a type of brittle crystalline carbon. It's pencil lead. Kind of a bad name for a guy whose head is supposed to be stronger than steel.
Though credit where it's due, introducing Phil early with intent to make him a ranger, as it's his activities that had led to the gem's discovery, was a good decision, and avoids the issues about Ivan's addition.
Though this is actually apparently a change from what was originally scripted. Early series information had Riley's brother originally set to take up the Graphite Ranger role.
Granted, it would have been better had his first appearance been focused on him, but Power Rangers doesn't do much proper storyline setup these days, so take what you can get. Though despite getting it, the gem doesn't bond to him. He's not worthy. Fury, after saving Poisandra from whatever's sealed in solitary, is given another shot at his job, setting out another attack on the team, during which a robot intercedes. Poorly.
A machine just can't react the way a human ranger can.
To be honest, it kinda sorta got in the way.
A jab at Robonite or actual Mechanical Sentai members? You make the call.
This leads into Phil meeting with them, and wanting to learn how they all became chosen. Though Phil's robot gets stolen, because Sentai footage adaptation. Phil's quest to become worthy, however, is a dumb one. In part because he decided to specifically ask Koda, who is the least articulate member of the team, making it think that if he does good deeds, it'll have to acknowledge him.
However, doing something because you expect to get something from doing those actions isn't really altruistic. You are doing them in the service of a greater goal and your own desires, making it ultimately a selfish recourse. Take, for example, Shinji Kido.
While Phil doesn't quite recognize this, his underlying desire was ultimately to help people. Thus, after this whole scheme fails, he decides to turn over this gem as well to the Rangers, since it's clear the gem isn't going to choose him. However, with Fury choosing to attack during this meeting, Chase's sister, Chloe, who was visiting from New Zealand this episode, is put in danger via the crossfire, as she runs into the middle of a battle, despite the vantage point she enters from being one where she should have been clearly able to see the monsters, and then instead of turning around and running away, she tries to escape by running deeper into the battlefield when the way behind her was still clear.
What the fudge, Fickle?
But this finally gets Phil to show his nobility in rescuing her from being a dumbass, at risk to his own life in his reckless charge, which makes the gem finally acknowledge him. I'll say this, at least with as simplistic as this is, it at least makes Phil earn his empowerment. Though they had some issues with the graphite ranger suit, the stunt version's construction was a bit off in color, thus the shade of gray used for the arms came off as a grayish blue in this first appearance. The suits they used for the original footage were custom made for the show, and not using the same materials as the original Kyoryuger suits did, as shown by how much shinier the Dino Charge versions of them are. Thus, while the others have been off with respect to the set night footage at times, this one is the most notable. Though there is also an actual plot hole invoked here. Phil just got his Energem, and Kendall has not had the time to produce the related batteries for it, as has been established she needs to do, and yet Phil already has Dino Chargers for the Pachycephalozord, which is called upon to save the day this episode. Though with Phil having his own duties as a prince, with him now empowered and so little Kyoryu Gray footage to adapt, they shove him off back home to Xandar and out of the show.
Ironic, as originally from solicited information and spoilers, Riley's brother was meant to find the Graphite Energem, and that actually made more sense than Phil finding the gem God knows where. As I've been saying, all of the gems, except Violet, should be around the Amber Beach area. For them to be elsewhere just doesn't fit at all the setup from the first episode. But Riley's brother? He has other duties on their farm which would keep him occupied. He's nearby if they absolutely need backup, and would have piggybacked off an already established point.
No matter how you slice it, plays things straight from Brave 13's bond slicing plot. Sheer Fear showing his worth to Sledge by snipping the bond Poisandra and Kirio have formed, and then using it on the team to snip their bonds of friendship as well.
Waste too much time on that thing. You, Sir Chase, are the master of wasting time.
I have better things to do. I'm out of here.
Grand idea.
Hey!
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything that different. They just turned the asshole dynamic among the teammates on full time. You've kind of failed to show that there's a semblance of mutual respect among peers with them.
Though due to Shelby dropping her phone, Riley and Coda, the two unaffected, figure out what's happened and try to bring them back together.
We build strong friendships. All of us.
He's right, we did.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
The problem is they entirely overcompensate for this supposed spell they're under, severing not just the bonds of friendship, but bonds to anything, making them shirk off duties and not care about anything but themselves, even in the face of world destruction, which is something they should care about. As the world? It's where they keep all their stuff. But reviewing the footage makes Riley find that Sheer Fear couldn't snip Coda's bond to people, and trying broke its blades.
You are not just friend. You are family.
Except that Monster by Power Set can cut the bonds of love and family as well, so bullshit.
So they trick it by wearing the other's clothes to break its scissors again, taking the broken piece to devise a reversal process, and stopping the rest of the team before they all catch a bus to leave the city.
Tyler has a car. His own car. That he came to the city in. Why is he taking a bus to leave town?
However, the final arc of the first half of the series begins to form, with Fury telling Sledge he's found the Purple Energem in New Zealand.
Well, easy to commute in Goss since that's where the show's been filmed since Ninja Storm.
That, however, is delayed because of another irritants of this era.
Nickelodeon, God knows why, has insisted Power Rangers produce holiday specials as part of the standard season allotments. The problem is, now each season, you are clogging up events twice with them. And worse, they're aired out of order, which only helps cause continuity errors in production order, which have been all over the place because many networks do not understand how serialization works unless you give them the episodes to air one at a freaking time. Example again from Samurai? The debut episodes of that season didn't air until the first half of it had ended. Fortunately, the correct release order is restored on the DVD.
But as said before, all holiday episodes of Power Rangers are, by default, awful. While Super Sentai usually use their Christmas events as a ratings binge with a big event, holiday episodes for American programming are always consistently the most cheaply made, and Power Rangers always an exemplar of it with how much they are excuse plots for stupid shit. The ghostest with the mostest, however...
Seriously? You're ripping off Beetlejuice's catchphrase?
Is notable for it introducing an important plot point, one that is then reintroduced later, so is ultimately worthless. Wrench using the equipment Fury recovered earlier, that they used to suck energy power out of Ivan for the stolen Patera battery.
Still doesn't make sense how they did that.
And modifying all of it so they can resurrect their dead monsters from the pieces, creating the Reanimator.
I miss Jeffrey Combs.
With this filling the plot hole that would have eventually resulted from their stock footage repeatedly reviving old monsters and foes, and permitting Sledge now to have an endless army of disposable minions that, if they fail, he can just collect the bounty of later. Though credit where it's due, even if it's awful in concept, the Monster of the Week, Memorella's, plot is actually clever. Sneak into the costume party, hypnotize a ranger, and then use the freshly revived Duplicon to assume its form in order to sneak in among them. Because Chase was the cheap jerk about making the team the same costume, that of the stereotypical sheet ghost, not even the audience knows who was taken over and cloned so Memorella could infiltrate them. So there's a good resultant mystery on who's the faker in their midst.
And I'd be more lenient to this had they not botched doing this plot already earlier in the goddamn season. Just like with Brody's story arc in Ninja Steel concerning him finding his lost family, you don't get a free pass to repeat a story you just did immediately before and screwed up, even if you do it better the second time around. Immediate repetition should be avoided.
And worse, it's all in facilitation of a goddamn clip show with a just horrible framing device. As I've discussed before, clip show episodes have been dying out for a long time. Not just in the Tokusatsu medium I discuss, but all across television.
The reason for that is they have ultimately become a sunk cost fallacy, where you put money into something expecting proper returns as it's an episode of the show, even at times, special episode of the show, but the returns of the production of that episode are so minute or negative, it would actually be worth making it, when they could have just cut an episode from the season production order and saved that money to go where it is more needed. Since I discussed Super Sentai, the exemplar there is, since ratings are always so low in the last week of December on Japanese television, Toei in the old days would just slot a clip show in the production order to fall there. Justified because it would be right after they did the big expensive blowout Christmas event, near the end of a 48 to 52 episode show anyways, so some recap leading into the final arc is justified. But they stopped doing so several years ago so as to save money for the final big event and just started skipping that week. Power Rangers already operates with a ridiculously low budget for a show like this, that the cost in making these asinine episodes is all the more idiotic. And they do them before they've even broken 20 episodes. Not at the end of the show where you can justify it, but before they've even reached the middle of their entire story. You don't do this!
Hell, even the fake out for this episode is stupid. Shelby for some reason choosing to lie once she's slid into Kendall's lie detector, which makes everyone suspect her even though she knows they'll then blame her, thus has no reason to lie. Bar covering up her attraction to Tyler, which she doesn't even need to reveal to not lie about any of this to begin with. But it's eventually revealed that Coda is actually the imposter by the tip-off of him calling Kendall Miss Morgan, as Coda is the only one Kendall lets call her by her name. It would have been far better for them all to answer the question she asked correctly, but Kendall figure out who the faker is through their failure to capture their victim's mannerisms, since that's what they do anyways, instead of accusing someone who's not the doppelganger, but senselessly lied anyways. Oh, and as an Easter egg for those with high visual acuity, they didn't even clip the stock footage right. A couple frames of the Kyoryuger's cockpit scenes are visible in the giant scale brawl that takes place to end all this. But back to the story arc already in progress, Chase is forwarded a newspaper from New Zealand with a UFO sighting on it, which matches the pods from Sledge's ship, tipping them off to a need to go down under to find what they're after, though they've got some time for that as...
I just came back for dinner! I'm hungry!
The Annihilator of the Dinosaurs, everyone. Remember when Monsters and Power Rangers had menace and dignity?
So they fly to Auckland, on an airplane.
You have a Zord that can fly there, and this is official Ranger business. Hell, you return to Ember Beach on a Zord. You didn't need to buy plane tickets
to try and track down the one who took the photo. But unfortunately, the majority of the episode is nothing but a glorified advertisement for the New Zealand Tourism Commission. Come see the sights of a city you have seen countless times in this show for over 15 years due to their footage recycling, and for a country that actually bans the broadcast of Power Rangers. They find the guy who took the picture, a guy named Albert, who runs his own establishment of Bigfoot tours?
I'll be having the rant on Becca Barnes when we get to the Supercharged sect of the series. This was her first episode. But Bigfoot? Not a New Zealand thing. That is exclusively a North American mythological creature. This is if you went down to good old Louisiana in search of a kappa. You're on the wrong freaking continent!
What's more irritating about this is in the next episode, Chase does know and talk about New Zealand cryptids, such as the tiny fa, which plesiosaurs are similar to. So they did know an actual existing New Zealand mythological creature, and actively didn't use them, despite setting this arc in New Zealand. Granted, Albert is in and of himself a fraud, the eye patch thing a giveaway to them actually ripping off Gravity Falls' standpoint with this character's demeanor. But the thing with frauds and con men is you have to give them the veneer of plausibility in their con games, instead of this actually showing Albert as batshit crazy. But at least he's the harmless kind of batshit crazy, as Tyler seems to bond with the old man over how he too used to go on adventures with his dad as a kid.
Well, that's what life should be, don't you think? One great adventure.
While Albert gives up clues to help them search, the true reveal they were after comes from the six happening on a random bike theft and chasing after the perp, only to run straight into the Purple Ranger, who in turn runs from them, and straight into the hands of Meteor. The Purple Ranger is obviously Albert, and Albert is, well, pathetic. The elderly man utterly terrified and unable to fight at all. After finding the gem in the mountains,
New Zealand was once underwater before volcanic activity raised the landmass, so that makes sense. Though I seriously doubt anyone in the writing staff ever thought about that.
He found himself empowered after saving some other travelers that had gotten trapped in a snowstorm, and has only since used it to help stop crime around his town. And while he's spry enough to keep up with the younglings, sadly in the face of what he's facing, he can't get over his fear.
And hey, even though his counterpart is the ever-boisterous and awesome Shigeru Chiba, there's no shame in admitting that not everyone's cut out for this. There's a difference between wanting to help people and being capable of putting your life on the line against supernatural abominations. And it's not something anyone can do, and I do give the show major props for acknowledging that.
And he does show that nobility that earned him the gem in doing what he could after Tyler's left half frozen, doing his best to get him to safety. And this only reinforces the point that even if he can muster the courage, he's simply too old to be able to fight with them. Thus, Keeper reveals he can completely sever the bond of the Energem with its hosts, freeing it to bond with another. Fury realizes the Plesiozord must also be awake by this point, Fury turning down his ideas to claim it, citing the Pterazord failure.
And what the show doesn't cite is Fury had a battery for it and the Gold Ranger in his body to draw power from, even though that still makes no sense. It is not the Energem they're powered by, and the show later insists that the Rangers have no power without the Energem on them. So it's not like they could take control of it even if he did claim it first.
Thus, why Sledge intends to just destroy it outright. In hopes of finding it first, the team are still in New Zealand, Shelby having directed them towards a Dr. Runga, which impresses Kendall.
Really? If anyone knows about plesiosaurs, it's him.
Yes, and who is this guy? You didn't leave us in the loop to his identity. You kinda need to introduce someone before citing their magnificent purpose in an episode. How do you fail exposition dump?
I've only seen him on TV and in books. Look, guys, Dr. Runga has hundreds of fossil discoveries to his name.
And how do you fail to keep the audio quality consistent in the exact same goddamn scene? At least with my variance in audio quality, it's consistent between what's recorded live and what's coming from my Yeti.
Runga, like half the cast, acts like an egotistical jackass as he believes they are his competition in finding a plesiosaur skeleton, as the dude is obsessed with the skeleton.
It does rather resemble a plesiosaur.
Ivan is from 800 years in the past.
But I don't get why they're even asking this guy. From fossil evidence, plesiosaurs lived literally everywhere in the prehistoric sea as they were migratory animals. They would have zero luck pinning down just one location. But we need to search and check every sea cave in the region since New Zealand millions of years ago would have all been underwater until its volcano erupted and started to build up its landmass. So this would still take years. I gotta give them credit for this one though. The location shoots for this search, once again pandering to New Zealand's tourism board, are really varied and must have taken them a while and some money to put in motion. And for once the original CGI works look good here for a Megazord.
Though why they're using the combined Megazord instead of just the Pterazord is baffling.
Fortunately though, the purple energem can act as a homing beacon, Tyler and Shelby finding it right off the coast.
Oh, come on. If you're going to not shell out for more footage than the one she logically shouldn't have been able to get on her phone since it wasn't out yet, don't cut to us looking at the screen capturing footage she logically could not have recorded.
But with it surfacing, they've only led Meteor right to it.
Plesiozord is being attacked!
Plesio! It can't hear you! It's made of CGI and you're on the opposite coast so sound wouldn't travel. Also, stop stating the freaking obvious!
Sledge keeps sending monsters we already defeated. He must be out of ideas.
Actually, Toei keeps slashing Super Sentai's budget, but you guys all must know something about being cheapskates, right? It's not like Saban has ever been cited as not paying their staff, right? And hey, here's a thought. You didn't need to use the stock footage of Meteor being destroyed last episode, as it was from a completely different episode to begin with that you didn't use at all.
Also, why did Tyler and Shelby do nothing to help Plesio when it was under attack? You lost your brownie points, dude!
Fighting away from the group because you fear defeat, scaredy cat!
That makes no sense. Like, literally, fighting alone shows your strength and that you don't need backup, not because it shows fear. The dialogue in this show, people.
Wait, did they reverse the video footage for this show? How do they expect people to not notice this shit? The fight is ultimately a distraction. Fury assaulting Runda. Why? How does Fury know about this guy? With footage of the mech, Kendall determines that it seems to be sick.
Once awakened, some Zords need to be in contact with their energems.
And you know this... how? You've had a total of 8 prior subjects, and both Coda and Chase seem utterly oblivious to this purported condition. A speculative statement you could have gotten away with, but a statement of fact? No.
Runga somehow knows to go after Shelby for evidence of Plesio, using his fame to get close and snag a copy of the video, which he then proceeds to create a press conference over, which is extremely dumb considering Fury's threat to him, as all he seems to care about is fame.
Join me for the announcement. Then you can dump that museum and you'll be famous beyond your imagination.
Is that all this means to you? A chance to be famous?
He already is famous! This makes no sense!
But at least this rid Shelby of her shallowly written hero worship of him. Kendall tracks where Plesio likely went.
Coda, we're in New Zealand! North this way!
North is always north. The compass doesn't change just because you're in the southern hemisphere.
But Runga has followed, admitting all he ever wanted was to meet a real living dinosaur.
It's not a dinosaur.
It's a Zord. Wait, I don't understand. Only Power Rangers use Zords.
Keep your identity secret. No one may know you are a Power Ranger.
And you know what a Power Ranger uses? How?
They get to Plesio, but have so wasted their budget, they have no CGI work left to show it regenerating its power and sending it flying up. Runga, somehow, having redeemed himself by being the one to restore it. Of course, since Kendall has not created the Plesio battery, due to stock footage we now have the plot hole of how Plesio already had its battery installed. But now with the Energem and Plesiozord in hand, they need to find a bond mate, staging accidents to see if a good Samaritan will bond with it. With this all, of course, going nowhere, as that's not how determining heroism works.
And if you know the material they have to work with, the fact they keep trying this with men is also a big tip-off. Don't even know why they're trying to force it to bond, though. It's not like Kendall tried that with the pink energy, right? Really, all they need to do is keep hitting their base.
But because of their idiocy, Fury and the Monster of the Week, Wishstar, learn Purple's unbonded. So Wishstar goes rogue to attempt to earn his freedom, enchanting wishing cards which ensnare the team, in an adaptation of a story point that really doesn't make sense and really does not inform any aspect of the characters with how superficial the wishes made are. If anything, it informs Riley as him continuing to be the straight man in the group's band. But upon learning that there's an unbound Energem, Sledge decides, begrudgingly, that there's one inmate they need that can infiltrate while the rest are unawares.
Or you could use that appearance cloning monster, just copy some random person. You did that twice already with team members. Might work this time with an unknown. Hell, it would have been more legitimate than the last time they did it.
No, instead, from out of solitary comes... Heckle.
Not Heckle! What are you afraid of? He's not that dangerous.
I say, he looks positively British.
Basically, run.
I haven't been out of that cell for centuries. I love what you've done with the place.
Did Sledge go bounty hunting after he got his ship's engines fixed after that comet tow? There's kind of a continuity error all around this part of the plot.
He offers Heckle freedom, but Heckle wants more. Partnership! Wait, is that Necroli in jail?
Not sure whether to count this as them just having the suit or a Sentai reference, as their counterpart from Magi Ranger, Van Kuria, ended up in a similar state during the events of Gokaiger vs. Gavan.
But yeah, Heckle doesn't exactly start the show as appearing smart, wanting to co-rule the universe with Sledge, but as has been pointed out, Sledge doesn't want to rule the universe. He's a hired goon that just happened to have his own minions. I'll get into Heckle's failure of a planned story arc later, but he's free to do his work, as the Rangers find all of their wishes end up screwed up in the classic Monkey's Paw Catch-22.
My stomach.
I should not have a counter for fart jokes.
The most prominent one of the wishes leads Tyler and Shelby on a disastrous date, and to continue Tyler's story arc, encounter his father, who runs off, leading to a fight with Wishstar, which makes them realize the Monkey's Paw screwing of probability alteration powers. But too late to prevent Kendall from deciding to wish to find herself a Purple Ranger.
You could have been hit! Thank you.
You are very welcome.
They seriously could not be lampshading harder their original intentions with this guy.
With him saving her, Kendall thinks he's the candidate she wished for, but before he can make contact and steal it, Wishstar does the job for him. And hey, it allows him to keep his cover for later. Heckle actually having the foresight to realize blowing his chances like that would screw him up in the long run.
I'll say this about Heckle, he does manage the schemer and infiltration aspects of what they originally intended for the guy. That makes him a hell of a lot better an antagonist than the ones we've had thus far. Even though this is, again, an echo of Tenaya 7 from RPM.
Unfortunately, Sledge is a dumbass and reneges on the deal with the Purple Energem now powering his personal blaster, even though Heckle has an in to be a mole and tell him of all the Rangers' operations and possibly steal the other stones. He instead throws Heckle back in solitary, to the utter irritation of many viewers who knew what they were intending here. But with the danger of Sledge having any of the gems, Riley has an idea. Says the now the spaceship, why don't they assault Sledge's to get it back?
Brilliant!
Thus leading to the climax of the first half of the series. One more Energem. Riley and Kendall, likely using the salvage scanning equipment of the Energem detector, build a small droid which can sneak onto Sledge's ship to grab the Energem for them, expecting Sledge to attack, which he does, blasting them all with a paralysis beam, only for Keeper to actually do something?
But you'll never have the heart of a ranger.
He doesn't need it. He has tech that works around the bonding process. You know, Gosei was completely worthless as a mentor, and he still is the worst one in how he drafted 5 inept kids and just threw power-ups to them so they gained no real battle experience with which to earn victories, but at least he did something. All Keeper does this series is speak empty, worthless platitudes and things that screw over the others eventually.
Sledge steals Tyler's Energem, somehow, which also somehow makes him lose his powers.
How? Their morph forms, well, they can use their Energem to power them, are usually maintained by the batteries, which have their own completely separate charge of the Energem's energy, which should still allow Tyler's powers to work fine. Hello? That was the entire thing with Fury and the Patera battery. He could siphon off what was naturally part of the energy Ivan had been infused with to recharge it. At least from the logic, that is the only way that could have worked. And he didn't have any problems using it despite lacking an Energem. I mean, that was dumb, but at least be consistent with your show's own internal logic.
Kendall, seeing this, and Keeper's abduction, realizes it's not going to be enough to just have the little drone do the job, and it's not like that thing in an exit strategy anyways. So she boards one of the pods as well. Tyler's loss of power frees him, so he deflects Sledge's attacks to free the others, allowing them to escape in Patera. This failure pisses Sledge off so much, he decides, screw it, he's going to free his biggest bad.
Release the Green Zilla!
Really? Really? I mean, yeah, I made the Godzilla joke, but I'm supposed to try and be funny in these videos. Plus, I've actually reviewed Godzilla movies, so it's not an out-of-place reference for me.
Though at least we finally get some good utilization of them having the original sets. Tyler, realizing they're facing a losing situation, making the decision to split the team. He and Shelby will save Keeper and Kendall, the rest hold off D-Boss. Kendall, on the ship, manages to hide in a provided hazmat suit, and lucks into Wrench just handing her the prize. Sledge reveals he wants to use the red Energem on his monster-growing magna beam to destroy Earth, presumably so he can just net the others with each from the debris. Though this pisses off Poisandra, as it's, once again, delaying their wedding, which he said would happen after he got 2. Tyler and Shelby arrive with Plesio, showing the ship's actually a fair amount bigger than expected. But as Kendall doesn't know the plan, she screws up in trying to silence an intruder alarm, leading to her being revealed among them, and sent to the ship's incinerators, where she finds Keeper. Managing to save him with some sludge she managed to get her hands on, and by eating a hole in the deck, they escape. Her conduct proving to her Energem her worth, and changing her into the Purple Dino Ranger.
Honestly saw this happening from episode 1. Would have been nice were this more attached to a character arc about her conduct towards Shelby and the others, and her annoyance at not being chosen before. I miss Ninja Storm.
You were always worthy of being a ranger, Kendall. You only needed the opportunity to prove it.
She outfought foot soldiers back when they got the Ankylozord. Did it actually need to see that to decide? I thought they would just, read the properties of those who picked them before they choose, like they did for over half the team by this point.
Tyler overhears their plan to blow up their mechs, splitting for the others and making a heroic sacrifice, and an actually really damn noble one at that. Good framing for the helplessness Shelby feels at Tyler staying behind, too.
Now, I've said a lot of negative things about the presentation of a lot of Neo Saban stuff, but Peter Salmon, the director for this and several prior Dino Charge episodes, was really good at his job in staging a lot of them. Him and Charlie Haskell, who's been a regular Power Rangers director since Ninja Storm, really seemed to know how to do their jobs and get the best they could out of the casts when they were on screen, even if the editing team would muck things up, which significantly helped to sell the cast as people this season. They both left after the first half of Dino Charge.
But Tyler's noble actions in trying to recover his Energem go as badly as you'd think. Sledge firing, only for it to not work, as he served as a distraction long enough for the Deus Ex tracker bot to save the day.
Master Sledge!
And with that, Sledge's mass destroys the ship's helm, setting it crashing into the atmosphere and breaking under the re-entry friction. The prisoners escaping in the pods, as Sledge and his minions go down with the ship.
You're a half-brain!
After 65 million years, you're just figuring that out?
Patera rescues him, the others united gleefully, especially Shelby, with them all together at full power. The 8 of them forming the Plesio Charge Pachyrex formation, and fossilize that Godzilla reject. But with this, and thinking Sledge is done with, Keeper dismisses the remaining team as they only have 2 left to collect, asking them to keep their gems with them in case there's danger. Oh wait, no they don't, because that would be the smart thing to do. Coda and Kendall and Ivan sticking with Keeper. Chase has been repeatedly lampshaded, is off to visit his family for Christmas. Riley's headed back to his family's farm. Phil has a country to run, and Tyler can now continue the search for his dad unimpeded.
Even though Fury was his only lead and that subplot was always tied into this region, so him leaving doesn't make any sense.
And Shelby is also off, even though she was the one who wanted to work here to dig up fossils in the region, so also has no reason to leave.
You wanna help?
Okay, yeah, I take that back. She totally has a reason to leave. However, evil stirs back on the ship, as in solitary confinement, Zelchak's Millennium lives.
You know, as bad as the mid-season got and the residual dumb that permeates all of this series, the majority of the Purple Ranger arc was structurally good.
Oh, there are still problems with it like the entire series has, but from a storytelling standpoint, it was structured well from the Purple Energem's discovery to it falling into Kendall's hands, and seeming to close the conflict more tangibly than Samurai and Megaforce did, so they could pivot the status quo cleanly when the show came back. But like much of the show, they really needed someone else to fix the dialogue, which can get really awkward and some of the plot points don't make any sense. Showing that at least here, there was a wealth of good ideas, just not executed properly.
Hell, as I started with, that's pretty much the first half of Dino Charge to me. Good ideas with decent characters executed poorly. Up to a point.
But unfortunately, the first half of the show does not end on a high. Its death knell being Race to Rescue Christmas. Before the team splits to leave for the year, though this episode aired before One More Energem, it's supposed to be set after it, the lot of them having an early Christmas dinner, only to receive a distress call from Santa?
I've seen this movie. It hits Paris.
No, seriously, for those not familiar with the Mighty Morphin years, Season 3 of the show had a Christmas special, I'm Dreaming of a White Ranger. That is actually considered the best of the Christmas specials despite them all being terrible. It has the same basic plot of the team getting a call from Santa after the relevant evil faction attacks his workshop. In this case, Poisandra stealing the computer Santa's used to store his naughty and nice lists.
Good on the old man for staying modern with the tech of the now. Must make it so much easier to plot his route with a GPS.
Unfortunately, it's an excuse for a glorified clip show not long after they did the Halloween one.
This is again why people hate the modern holiday specials. Not only are they wastes of time, they're wastes of time that air within 3 months of each other.
At least she had a good idea from it, used the clip to try and learn of the team and find their base to steal their gear, but as this is after the ship goes down in the second half's developments, this is just baffling. Likewise, despite this occurring after their ship crashes, by all of their evidence in the timeline, their ship is still in orbit.
Next time, the rest of Dino Charge, and if you thought I was pedantic here, you haven't seen the worst of it yet.